And welcome back to the Part-Time Otaku Podcast. My name is Dave.
My name is Grant.
And we're back in your life with another movie review. This week, Grant, tell the people what we're talking about.
The 1980s classic. Arguably one of the most definitive anime movies of all time. Akira.
Is it Sailor Moon? Yeah. So this is a really big one. If you guys haven't been following along, we've been doing bi-weekly reviews of anime classics. Some we've seen, some we haven't. I think Akira is maybe the only exception in this whole list. I saw it once years ago in English, and you had never seen it. Is that accurate?
No, okay. It was my first time watching it.
Did you watch the sub or the dub?
The sub.
Of course, yes. Okay, so I watched the sub as well, and I was much more like awake and present this time that I watched it. I think I may as well should have just said like I never watched it because I remembered so little of this movie upon rewatch. So I'm glad we both kind of went into it pretty cold. Obviously, spoilers ahead on the 30-something-year-old movie, or more than that. But we're going to talk about the whole thing, our impressions. And then that will be 3/4 of the way through our movie reviews. And then obviously that means the next movie review is going to be what, Grant?
Grave of the Fireflies.
We're ending it on a heavy note.
Yeah, I don't know. This movie was pretty heavy.
This is a lot.
Yeah, we'll save that for a minute. But I was caught off guard for sure.
I'm really excited to hear your thoughts because Akira kind of lives in like this really big cultural spot, right? Like it's and Grant and I, like Grant, we've talked about this, like, you know, when the influence of something is so big that like it's kind of hard for it to live up to your expectations because it had such an impact on the culture.
Well, you know what? Let's just jump right in on that because that is exactly how I felt with this movie.
Okay, really quick. Let me read you the synopsis. Here's a quick, short one of Akira. Biker Kaneda is confronted by many antisocial elements while trying to help his friend Tatsuo, who is involved in a secret government project. Tetsuo's supernatural persona adds the final twist. That synopsis dilutes the movie a little bit, I think. But okay, hit me up. So it sounds like you had a bad case of seeing this a little too late.
I wouldn't say a little too late. I think it was just, you know, a classic case of I liked it, didn't love it. It was fun. Like I was watching it, and I didn't, you know, I don't feel bad because like this movie has its legacy. Like it doesn't need it doesn't need my, you know, inner thought, you know, opinion on it. But it was just like I feel like I was watching the movie, and I just kept reminding myself like, oh, this movie is a big deal. I see why. We're just so separated from, you know, the original release date, and like, you know, that's not always the case because we watched, you know, Paprika, and that movie came out in 2007. So like, you know, there was quite some distance with that. Obviously, not quite as big to Akira, but the entire time I was watching it was, oh, I get it. Oh, yes, and I see so much of this in other things. There would be, and you know, the one thing, I think a spiritual successor to this that I like more is Neon Genesis, which clearly would not exist without Akira.
Interesting.
Like,
that's an interesting take.
In almost all aspects. Like it's really, you know, like just the headiness of it, you know, just the, you know, the familial bonds and, you know, the fracturing of bonds and abandonment issue. You know, it's
huge
actually
societal, like dystopian type
problems.
shit.
Oh yeah, so it's, you know,
but a lot of stuff. Yeah. Sorry, just to interject, but a lot of stuff that was going on in Japan then, and oddly enough, is still going on today. I was watching this shit, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like this is still topical. This is fucking weird."
That was the crazy thing too, you know, because I remember hearing about the references of, you know, in 2019 when, you know, there was all the civil unrest, you know, for a good reason in our world, you know, like there was people were in the streets, they were protesting for, you know, for legitimate and good causes, you know, against like just kind of the shittiness of the world kind of all came to a head in 2019, maybe a little before that, 2018, 2017, but 2019 was a big year. So to see this movie project that almost to the year in almost a similar, like, you know, the people are rioting and protesting for almost not quite exact same reasons, but it's, you know, there's some parallels there. It was kind of spooky.
A lot of suppression themes, a lot of really scary stuff. Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, this is how often do you see a moment in the future just kind of like, snapshotted like that, and just such accurate detail, and it's, like I said, I liked it, didn't love it,
Yeah,
but
I didn't realize, in my first watch, like years ago, I only realized it this time that the present day was 2019. I didn't realize how, like that was the specific time period, because I think I missed as well, like the movie opening on 1988, and then there being an explosion, and then a 31 or 30-year time skip, right? So I, that was like a little detail I missed, which sounds basic because it is, but I just wasn't paying attention to it the first time I watched it.
I will say, if there's one thing I genuinely do love about this movie is the haunting soundtrack.
Soundtrack is good.
It is,
and it builds. Did you notice that?
Yeah, the like kind of like the ending crescendo of like the final fight. Like as the final fight is waning, it was really cool how the music was continuing to elevate even though the fight was kind of finishing.
Yeah,
but it was still like this movie, and the word I'm trying to put together for that, it's not incoherent, but the whole movie, it's very. I actually found this movie trippier than Paprika, even though like Paprika was like designed by purpose to be kind of confusing and in your face like that. So but the soundtrack was just, it made everything work. I think I would like this movie a lot less if that soundtrack wasn't just, like you said, building from the beginning and just kind of like when it ends, it fucking ends, man. Like it's really, really good.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed it the first time around, and I also didn't notice the fact that it really builds, and like it's like, I don't know what kind of work they were doing. Maybe we could have done like some Googling on this beforehand, but like they were doing weird like breathiness in the sound. Like, did you catch a lot of that? Like it sounded like they had someone like hyperventilating on the soundtrack a lot of the time. It was really cool.
A couple times they do it a lot in tandem in moments of like small respite for the characters.
Yeah.
It's like the way they kind of fit in, like the natural. When it's quiet, I found there's a lot more natural music, which was, again, seems obvious, but then when it's outside of them talking, it's just like it's like fingers on the chalkboard. You know what I mean? Like it's so erratic and stressful. It's
stressful is a good way to put it. It sort of like makes your hair kind of stand up on its ends a little bit. What did you think? There is always one moment, like I remember very specifically from my first ever watch, and a couple of moments that I've always seen like in videos referenced. There's obviously the famous Akira shot. I don't know if you're aware of that one. But like, what did you think about the animation? Because that was obviously a really big part of the story when it came out. What did you think about that?
Well, the story is great. Like it's. And this goes back to my original thought of when I was watching the movie of like, oh, I see why this is a big deal. Like I bet you, I remember Leanna and I were talking about it after the movie, and she has a similar temperature on as I did, and I remember just looking over as the movie ended, and I was like, I bet you people were fucking scared of this movie in 1988. Like this
might be an uncomfortable watch.
For people that just because in the late 80s, I'm sure some anime and manga was clearly this side of the world, but for a movie with such like big capital and being pushed the way it was, because this movie I have read over that over the years, it was massive. Like they spent so much money on this. The word on the street was that you got to see this movie. I bet you people saw this movie and they were like, I don't like how I feel right now.
Well, yeah, it was also one of the first ever and by far biggest like anime movies out of Japan, or just Japanese film, to like infiltrate this like the culture in the West. You know what I mean? Like I like to think that people in like the US and Canada saw this movie and they're like, what the fuck are they doing over there in Japan? like this is the movie that penetrates somehow. You know what I mean?
But like just and it just oozes 80s, right? Like it reminds me of watching like those old Dragon Ball clips, or even Gundam. There's a lot of Gundam in this, I found.
Oh my god!
In the way they drew like the neo noir cities, and just the nuclear wastes, of like all the damage, just very, very, very 80s, like
Blade Runner-y.
Blade Runner. But you know what? Like not too much Blade
Runner.
No. Like I'm glad when I watched this. I'd always assumed this movie was more cyberpunk than it actually ended up being.
Oh, interesting.
So it was kind of like, it was a little more muted. There wasn't it was kind of just like people, and it was like people versus science. It wasn't like tech on tech warfare like you see in like a lot of Blade Runner or even Neon Genesis. It's a lot about like
mechs, right?
Yeah, but not even mechs. But like, there's not like the whole like there's no augmented humans other than like like the Espers in this movie. But it's I don't know. Like I really like the tone of the movie. You know, like I kind of like the theme of how there's a lot of characters that like are clearly drawn the same way. They're all made to look very very similar. But sorry, also to answer your question earlier, like the one scene, like animation wise, that stuck out to me was when they're finally arrested and they're in that police station and the dude runs in with like the grenade and ends up being like a smoke bomb or whatever. That was the scene out of the whole movie that stuck out to me. They start beating the fuck out of the guy.
Wow.
And then they walk out, and then later, like, it just kind of, clearly it was a real grenade, had like a delayed fuse or something, and it blows up in the background. And I was like, man, this movie, and that was the scene that kind of like made me think, I bet you this spooked people out. I was like, that is some like real shit. Like in a movie that's clearly super super sci-fi. I don't have like the movie knowledge to know exactly what all came out in the 80s, but I'm sure there wasn't a ton of shit like this. I'll tell you that. It's I don't know, like as I talk about it, like it's just I keep hitting the theme of just how big a deal this movie is for like the obvious reasons, and its influence is everywhere. I thought Neon Genesis influence from like the 90s forward was evident. I see so much of like the entire the genre of anime in this freaking movie. It's insane.
Yeah, I remember in the final battle there towards the end. I can't remember who was going at it. It was Tetsuo, obviously, and someone else. I think it was Tetsuo and some of the kids. But I remember like they had this zoom out shot that is like iconic in anime, and especially in Dragon Ball Z these days, or in Dragon Ball, where they do like the zoom out shot and they stop drawing the characters, but instead they just draw the characters' colors. Like if you feel like you're Goku and you have like, I don't know, blue ki all around you, and he's fighting like Frieza who has like red ki. Instead of like drawing the characters, they just zoom out, show you a bird's eye view, and then just show you like the traces of color going at it. And that's like very typical of like shonen anime these days. And then I saw it in this, and it was like very nuanced. They didn't like overdo it, but they show all these points of impact, and then like things kind of blowing apart as a result. And I was like, holy shit, this is like the essence of like every Dragon Ball Z fight ever in like a quick sort of like 2 or 3 shots. It was really weird. The shot that always gets me, and I say always, but the 2 times that I've seen it, and then I've seen it on YouTube a bunch, is in the intro, maybe within 5 to 10 minutes, and it's the light trail on the taillights of the motorcycles. You know how they fade and they hang in the air. I was like, holy shit, how the hell that's just something I hadn't seen before.
That first action sequence of them against the rival clown gang is like top tier. Like, one of the most well done like action scenes, and just it did a really good job of setting the tone of how like real violence this movie has, and then they keep all the psychological stuff. I guess like they introduce it with like one of the Esper kids there that kind of shows up, but just like the scene too when like they put the spotlight on the guy that's escorting that kid. That when we first discovered like about the Espers.
Oh, that was so good.
And I was like, it was haunting. I was like, oh man, like this movie really, really, really did like, tense moments. How like natural they are, and the like just and the reactions, and
they have him under a helicopter spotlight, and you can see the blood
get away.
Yeah, you can see the blood dripping as he runs, like just this big detail. Yeah. The Akira shot, I don't know if you're aware, but for anyone who's not aware, I don't blame you. I've only, I was aware of it dimly, and then I've seen some YouTube videos on it recently. But there's a famous shot in this movie that people have been paying tribute to ever since it came out, for over 30 years. And it's the shot of Kaneda against that rival clown bike gang, I believe. And he pulls this sick slide maneuver. Like it shows, he skids on his bike horizontally to bring it to a stop, and the biker he's going up against tries to do the same but loses control and falls off. But the shot itself is him, like, still camera. He's hits the bike hard, it skids, horizontally stops, and he looks really cool, like back, and he's going backwards away from the camera as it happens.
I knew it the second I saw it. I was like, oh, that's the shot.
So that's the famous Akira shot. For whatever reason, like something like that had never been done before. I want to say, Grant, it's dozens plural of animes that have done it. It's been done in Pokemon. It's been done in Dragon Ball Z. Like mainstream ones. I saw it on Reddit of like, through the years of animes paying tribute to it, just like by doing their own version of the shot. And there's dozens. There's so many of them. It's very, very neat. So that was like the obvious big one.
Yeah, like it's the movie's eye candy, like it's for the style of the time, like this is like, it's truly like when it comes to art, straight art, like this movie is a masterpiece. Like it's beautiful, it's stunning. The biggest detractor for the movie though is just like flat out the character development. I think the only character in the movie
character development?
Exactly, like the only character that gets any decent development is Tetsuo, funny enough. And it's just kind of seeing him go from clearly frustrated, developing into a psychopath, and then at the very end, like, when he's nuked, he kind of becomes like clear and sentient, like he becomes like a benevolent being. But it's I didn't love the character of Kaneda. Kaneda, but
it's funny, like the direction they go with Kaneda, because he's not like a typical protagonist. He's almost a little bit unlikable at the beginning.
Yeah, so I think he's like unlikable right to the end. Like just the way, like I'm already blanking on the girl's name.
K.
K. Like, yeah. So, just like the assumptions of like, oh, like I'm your girlfriend there, and the interactions with, I don't know if it's her uncle or her father or just like the people she's working with. He's like, oh, like I guess I'm her boyfriend. Or I wouldn't call it that. Like he has funny moments. Also, it was pretty distracting the whole movie because, and I know it's not because I looked into it. He sounded exactly like Takemichi from Tokyo Revengers.
Well, yeah, there's no way, right?
No, I know there's no way, but like he would hit these like high whiny notes, and I was like, that is oddly. It distracted the whole movie. Anytime he spoke, I was like, oh, it sounds like Takemichi. Like I had to pause the movie and look it up, and it's not.
That's funny. I never heard that, but that would be distracting if you think it's somebody the whole time. That's like what happened to me when I was watching like a week or two ago when I was finishing Vivi Fluorite, and I had that epiphany that the human Matsumoto was Zeke. The voice actor was playing Zeke in Attack on Titan, and also Matsumoto and the Dr. Matsumoto. It was so distracting. I had to pause the whole thing to watch it, to confirm, because I couldn't get it out of my head. So you were right. Like it's a small crew, right, of people. Like there's only dozens of these. Well, maybe not dozens, but it seems to be. Yeah.
In the 80s, it probably wasn't too. Like I'm sure there was enough.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah.
I'm trying to think of my favorite shots, because I do want to stay on animation for a minute, and then I remembered it the moment I saw it, and it's post Tetsuo being abducted by the government. He's experimented on. They've identified him as a potentially a special case, and he escapes before he's recaptured, and he steals Kaneda's bike. Kaneda catches up with him and sort of helps him out because he gets jumped by that clown biker gang. And then after that whole kind of violent and a little bit disturbing interaction, because like I don't know if you remember, but they like take off the girl's shirt.
Yeah.
I remember just for anime even these days, like you've been saying, like I bet this made people uncomfortable. It's moments like that. But then this upcoming moment when he starts to hallucinate and he's feeling his stomach, and then they animate him like having a delirious moment, and the floor crumbles away and his guts fall out of his stomach. And then they do this like brilliant cut, and he's just regular but feeling his stomach. It's like, oh my god, like that is probably what that would be like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like I said, eye candy. Like this is the movie's strongest. Like the art direction of this movie is the strongest thing, and I think that's its biggest legacy. Like I don't think, the story, I think kind of hits home a lot of like the themes that was probably going on. Like you had mentioned earlier, a lot of the stuff that was going on in Japan at the time, a lot of the suppression and all that. But it's the art direction that's everything about this movie. It's insane. Because is this actually is this based on a manga?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry.
That would be good to know. That would be important to know. That'd be a key detail to know. But I don't know. It just when you look at the time frame when this made, it's so amazing to me that this was made at that time period and just the way it came out, and yeah, really good shit.
Akira is a Japanese cyberpunk media franchise based on Katsuhiro Otomo's seminal manga, Akira, published from 1982 to 1990. It was adapted into a 1988 anime film and 2 video games. Worth noting, the director of the movie, also the writer of the manga.
Well, there you go.
So
that's why it all clicks.
Art direction, like you just said. It sounds like, the original author of the manga, his vision didn't really get lost, or at least the art direction was probably very loyal to, or what he wanted at least, and that's usually what anime people get mad about. So that's fair. I'm trying to think of any other major moments that I really, really liked, and one of them, just staying on like animation, is towards the back half of the movie, towards the climax, because we should talk about the climax and how weird it gets, is when Tatsuo makes an arm for himself out of parts. That was fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. And then him not being able to control it. I thought that was a really cool moment where you clearly find out that he's just like, he's not behind the wheel anymore. Like whatever's going on is running the show. And just the scene of like his, post his arm kind of building up like that, where it kind of explodes into flesh again. That like little bits of metal, mainly flesh. I was like, whoa. Like,
I love that they built that though, because like it starts with his arm like bleeding into a chair, but it's like bleeding wires into a chair, and like they're all like at right angles and like perpendicular, like because they're not like, they're almost like veins, but they're not. You know what I mean? That was trippy. Again, like you said, art direction. I wrote in my notes, the end of this movie is just a bad mushroom trip.
The whole movie was like, I was like not uncomfortable, but it was just like, I think the movie was in. That's the thing. Like, I don't know. Like, I went into this movie so excited, not overhyped, but I was like, yes, I finally am sitting down to watch Akira. And, like I was mentally prepared and all this stuff. And like, I'm actually shocked it just didn't hit, And it's not that the movie didn't flow correctly. It's just like, again, man, the breakneck speed. I wonder if this is just like an anime movie. Not a problem, but like it's limited timing. They only have like an hour and a half to 2.5 hours potentially, I guess. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a movie that long in anime, but
yeah, it's like, it's a hair over 2 hours, and it doesn't really stop
at all. Like, I thought Your Name was fast.
Yeah.
And even like this.
Your Name has beats, like chill beats compared to this.
There was no moment. Like there was a couple moments, like, they had some dialogue between characters and like a little, great fight scenes too. But like, like it was just seemed that it was like action, and then, or like horror moments. Like there was no, no real time to slow down. And yeah, like, what am I gonna say? Like the movie's an all-time classic. Like people love it.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But it's very disconnected from the stuff we watch these days.
Yes.
And I don't blame you saying like the legacy of the film was kind of too heavy for it, because that's exactly how I felt, ironically, about Blade Runner. Like, I just could not, like, I liked it, but it was like that. It was so average for me, and I'm not saying that that's what you're saying about this. It's just that, like, I had just been hearing about how monumental it was for the time and how it changed cinema, and like how people, you need to understand like the weight that film had. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, I really think I did. And then I saw the movie, and
How old were you when you watched it originally? Again, were you
the original Blade Runner? No.
Akira.
Maybe 20.
Oh, okay. I think now that we're talking about it now, I think for me personally, this would have been a significantly better viewing experience if I was like 16.
Oh my god.
And I had been reading lists online of like getting into anime and like what is this movie, and like you're able to dodge all this legacy stuff.
Yeah, because you're not
a fucking ace in the hole.
Dude, you're so right about that, because like at 16 you're heady, but like you think you're heady, you know what I mean? Like you're not too up your own ass, or maybe sometimes you have to be up your own ass. to appreciate a movie like this in 2021. But I agree with you. If I saw this as a teen, I would have been like, coming into class next day, smoking a marijuana cigarette and being like, yo, you guys really need to see Akira, man. You guys don't understand art until you fucking see
I'm a
this
changed
shit.
man.
Yeah, man.
You haven't met me before.
Anyway,
you knew me yesterday.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys want to watch it at my place before we go to the Protest Hero concert, we should do that.
I think the legacy of it kind of dampened my experience a little bit, because it was just every shot I was like, oh, this is a big deal. Oh, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. I see this. I did it. It's funny when because last week we did our Dune review, and that was like a big problem for me. Again, kind of a different problem, but it's similar strokes.
No, similar.
Of,
I know you
know, like it was just the whole movie was like, oh my god, they did this from the book, they did that from the book. Oh, and it was just I was just more joyous. Like I couldn't just sit down and like, take it for exactly what was being shown in front of me. And I really wish I had that for Akira. It's kind of a bummer, honestly, because I kind of left out cold of like, wow, okay, well, I think honestly, the thing like was just like how scary the movie was, like not for me personally, but just like of the time and just how future thinking it was. It's crazy. It's honestly crazy.
I wonder how hard Grave of the Fireflies is going to hit us if we found this intense, because you're right, like it's intense.
Yeah.
I just felt a little disconnected the whole time. There kept being a lot of moments like obviously the famous shot I mentioned, some of the other favorite shots I mentioned. Another one is when Tetsuo is hallucinating in bed, because so many of the best shots ever come from hallucinations, let's face it. And the kids try and approach him, and they're giant teddy bears made up of inanimate objects. Oh. And then he fights them.
I found the scarier part of that is when he kind of defeats them and it reveals that they're the children, and you see the shock in their faces, and I was like, oh man, like they really showed how powerful Tetsuo was in that moment. Like we had seen it already, but also his first kill where he just like slams the dude, just like a wipe of his hand, and it's just like dust.
Dude,
like red mist.
I was hovering that part with my notes in my, like, as you said that. I completely forgot about that, because it's his first kill. It's like this moment, like, okay, he's going down a path now. Because at first you're like, okay, he's kind of like the runt of the litter amongst his friend group. Maybe we should talk about Tetsuo's arc, because he's the only character that has one in the movie. Should we talk about that briefly?
Yeah.
He starts as the runt of the litter. You can tell Kaneda is the cool guy. Kaneda has the cool bike, which is like one of the few pieces of cyberpunk gear in the whole movie, and it is pretty dope. And he has to be saved by Kaneda. You get the feeling that this is like kind of a frequent thing. He's not like the leader of the gang, so he's got like some resentment. We've seen that in a billion movies at this point, right?
See, but you know what? That was the thing. I did not get that vibe from this. I don't think that message was like clear enough. Because when you get to the point when Tetsuo and Kaneda kind of like get back together or see each other again, and he's like, no, like fuck you, dude. Like I can stand up for myself and all da. Like it's always you come to my rescue, and it's like, oh, is that like that thing you showed earlier in the movie? That's like a thing that happens all the time. I thought that was just like a one-off.
I see. So you feel like that wasn't like super well.
It didn't feel
laid
earned. Like their big beef, like when they kind of come back together, it didn't feel earned. I was like, oh, I guess they're just not getting along. Like,
well, to your point, Kaneda is completely perturbed by it. He's like, what?
Yeah.
He has no idea either. He's like, what do you mean? You've been upset this whole time? So I don't know. So that's the vibe I get, or I've connected those dots, I guess. But then he gets experimented on, and now he's a victim, right? Like he gets literally, he's abducted, experimented on illegally by the government. They do all kinds of shit for him, and the tricky part is like his descent into madness is like, I would say like pretty, I don't know if gradual is the right word, but
I think there's a natural flow to him kind of unleashing that. Yeah.
And then when he dusts this doctor, which is a super violent death on screen, because he like kind of explodes his body, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like it just turns like red mist. Like he kind of just like waves his arm.
What movie does this remind you of? Live action movie.
Okay.
Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan. When he can wave his hand. Have Have you seen the Zack Snyder Watchmen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So when he kills so and so at the end, he just sort of waves his hand, and the guy just explodes.
Yeah.
It's
over.
Yeah. It was like that. But it feels like, once he kind of took the villain turn, I'm back to Tetsuo. He was just like full villain after that. He was like, all right, I've chosen my path.
They really showed like how much he enjoyed himself, which is crazy. Actually, thinking back, I did like the scene too when he escapes the first time and he goes and finds that girl, and like they're riding Kaneda's bike there like through the streets and all that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Was
also,
that
like,
Kay? Was that her? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
What were you gonna say?
Well, also too, just like when Kaneda kind of like they find him and he comes to his rescue and does like that knee. Freaking knees the guy like in the air, jumps off the bike, and I was like, "Wow!"
I remember. I think that one's famous for a different reason because Kaneda does that, right?
Yeah.
I think that one's famous for a different reason because like I think it might be like dissected on the internet by people being like, "This is not possible. Like you can't jump that way." I don't know if I'm making that up or if maybe I just saw a couple of videos on it. But there's like there's this weird action scene in Akira where people are like, listen, this isn't how bodies work or physics works. Like the rest of this movie you can almost like get down with, but like every now and then they do something really weird. I don't know. I could be making that up, but I think there's like an action scene in Akira and it's like the kneeing the guy in the head off the bike. They're like, first, you couldn't be going like 60 miles an hour and then just jump on the road and keep running at 60 miles an hour. And then you can't.
Yeah. Yes. I remember Leanna laughed at that actually. She was like, oh, he's just running.
And then run full speed at a bike going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And it's not even a knee. I think he jumps and he kicks him with like the small of his foot. That's like the weird part. Anyway, whatever. So then Tetsuo and like, I mean, yeah, maybe that is more or less his whole arc until you get to the final battle with him and Kaneda at the end of the movie.
Dope laser gun.
It's sick laser gun. I will say, and I didn't realize this until you said it out loud, that the cyberpunk is not aesthetic, it's functional in this movie. Mm-hmm. So it's not Blade Runner in that like it's a vibe. It's like present day with conveniently futuristic tech. So like cool bikes, cool guns, maybe some neat helicopters and like government experimentation like tech, but like it's all central to the story. Like you need that for, you know what I mean? You need those things as opposed to just like we're building an aesthetic. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. I like that choice.
It's nice because like I like the cyberpunk genre, but I think it can just be too what's the word? Like it's too in your face sometimes. It's like like the style. It's I think a lot of the time it can be style over substance.
Yeah, and no, I get that.
And like when it works, it works. Like Blade Runner, iconic. Actually, what? This movie has more in common with Alien than it does like Blade Runner.
I should see Alien.
But same idea. It's like it's not aesthetic, it's function. So it's like you get all like this super high tech stuff. It's clearly cyberpunk to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. Akira, man, like it was a trip. I would like to. I'm definitely due for like this has to be rewatched just because like the legacy of it, and I don't think the one viewing. I've said this so far of every movie we've watched, for these movie nights, but like it's not that I'm missing something in the movie. It's just maybe like I need more time with it.
Yeah.
Like I want to be in the masses. Like it's like I said up top. Like I like it, didn't love it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like you don't have to love every single thing you watch, but it's just if there's something in that movie that I just missed and I did, maybe I could have clicked with, I should at least try again. But
yeah, I think give it some space, let it breathe a little bit. Come back to it in a little while.
We got a big year ahead of us. I'm not watching it anytime soon, but it's definitely due.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, I think one of the things with this movie that maybe the last thing we have to discuss is the ending, and how people interpret it, because the movie's like pretty in your face sometimes, and then a lot of the times because of its pacing, it's like this is happening now. Wait, what? You know what I mean? Like bringing like Akira coming back, the movie being named after a character who has no lines. What did you think about that whole thing? My interpretation was like, I guess the kids were somehow able to bring him back. But is he just a force of destruction? And like, do they just simply bring him back only to save them from Tetsuo? And then does Tetsuo then become a universe? Like what? Like one of the lines in there is like, "Is this the creation of a universe?" Like, there's a lot of weird shit at the end. How did that work for you?
It didn't. I really checked out on it. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the story of this movie. Like, I know people clamor as like it's a big deal, and there's clearly, the messaging is there. Mm-hmm. It just, this is where I compare it to Neon Genesis. Neon Genesis was way more convoluted, and not there's no debate. Way more up its own ass than this is.
I think that says a lot. But
I got it. Like they had, again, it was different between a series and a movie. They had the time to kind of explain the machinations of it. This was kind of just like, okay, yeah, there's a big, we're gonna harness our power, and I guess we'll stop them somehow. Like I could have used just a little more detail. And as the whole messaging, I just I don't know. That's just the thing that didn't work with me for this movie. Like, I'm sure, and I think that's the big red flag for me is in the rewatch, is to focus more on, what they trickled along the way for this to make more sense.
Mm-hmm. Especially around this time, in a lot of the books that I read, like, there is a trope, or I don't know if it's a trope or a stereotype or whatever you want to call it, but there's an observation that I've definitely witnessed about just like Japanese films and books and fiction. They like tragedy, and two, you often get a hard cut ending that is very intentionally ambiguous. And I don't know if that's like one of the things that made this like a big deal in the West, because like we weren't used to this kind of stuff. But after, what I will say, what has served me well is like, after having read so much so many Japanese books from Japan since the first time seeing this, and also all the anime we've watched, I was like, okay, this is a very anime ending. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just like, I think I recognize, like, this time around, I was like, oh, okay, well, this isn't the first time like a movie or a show has ended with just like an insane clusterfuck of imagery and like kind of intentionally vague storylines that then just like cut off and don't give you an explanation. That's normal-ish, or it's at least normalized. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was not shocked by how it ended, because like I said, I've seen Neon Genesis. I fucking know. I know how this rodeo goes. Like it's a lot more questions than answers. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I like that. In fact, sometimes I like the vagueness. It's just, the moments leading up to it of like, the harnessing of the power. And it was just, oh, he went in, you go, we can't come back. Da da da. Like, it's just, I don't know. It was just all too fast. Like,
well, those moments did feel very earned.
No, at all.
Because you could tell, I think you're supposed to be upset, right? I think you're supposed to feel like the kids are sacrificing themselves to help someone. But it doesn't quite work, because you don't care about that someone, and you don't necessarily care about the kids either. Because, I don't think I realized it until now, but like truly the only one with an arc is Tetsuo. And it's more of a descent into madness than anything. So it's kind of a bummer. Because Kaneda's not a real hero, and the kids, I think, are like meant to be really big supporting characters that we should care about, because presumably they've suffered quite a bit.
Do you think it's just a case of we've been spoiled with better stories since then?
I don't know. I truthfully don't know.
Because like
I don't know.
Again, like I'm not gonna, I guess I can kind of speak for you, but like Paprika and Your Name, like we were linked to those characters. We felt along with them, like. And when those movies ended the way they did, we're like, yes, like I'm on the journey with you. Even though like we were on the journey with them, I felt like I was not with them the whole time. I didn't feel like a part of the story.
You know what this is
sucked in.
Yeah. You know what this is like? This is like the difference of, this is like a Christopher Nolan movie where most of the characters are plot devices and their only purpose is to vomit exposition.
Sure.
Sometimes, I'm not saying that's the case for all of them, but like that is one thing that he's relatively consistently critiqued on is, you look at Tenet, for example, right? It's mostly just about, like, he's telling you this is how the world works, watch, and then it's just Robert Pattinson explaining the movie to you. And you don't really feel the journey those characters go on. This is not as bad as that because you've got Tetsuo, but I think you only have Tetsuo. And he's not the hero, because, like, he's not a likable character either. Like, you feel bad for him and then you quickly don't. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe, like, to your point, like, storytelling has just changed a lot since then. But maybe it's just that kind of movie. Maybe it's more about the plot than the people in it. Does that make sense?
I thought I liked the world building. I think of anything that even, like, relates to story in this movie. The only thing for me that knocked it out of the park was the world building. Like, that was a believable city. You know, just like the small anecdotes you get from characters about, like, you know, from the past, and like they tried to set up, like, the guy that was on the city council who was help funding the terrorist group, and how he was, like, just like a greedy villain at the end. I was like, did I, like, miss something? Where, you know, like,
yeah,
you know,
it's trying to do a lot, right? Yeah,
it is trying to do a lot. Yeah,
like, you're right though. Like, I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about it. That, you know, the general or whatever, you know, one of the authoritative guys with the military that's, like, working with the scientists a lot of the time. Like, he's like,
not that guy.
No, I'm just saying, like, he has this whole arc that you kind of forget about. Because, like, really his job is mostly, like, sending the military after the kids. But then he has, like, this good moment after he's demoted by the government. He's like, no, screw it. I'm going to try and help anyway. And it's like, wait, am I supposed to be...
was pretty cool.
Yeah, like, so I'm like, wait, am I supposed to keep track of this now? And then also, you know, like, there's this whole thing going on throughout the whole movie of, you know, just general civil unrest happening. And you're, like, trying to balance that with, like, this literal fantastical storyline. It's a lot for 2 hours. It's a lot. So I don't know. Did we give a 1 out of 10 rating for the last two films?
I think we did.
On the podcast, yeah? Okay. It's that time.
Legacy, it's a 10. Legacy, it's a 10. But, like, for me personally...
that's not the question. You know that.
No. But, like, it's, like, you know, I feel like I've explained myself well enough over this, you know, almost hour.
And
like,
we've also said, you know, our opinions are subject to change and evolve.
Absolutely.
Right? So this is in the moment.
It's, like, it's a 7.5, 7.5. You know, it's, like...
Yeah.
It just, the story, you know, like, you know, I'm a big story guy, and there was just a lot there, but it just feel like the roads were not connected completely by the end of it. So it's, I don't know, like, it's, like, great movie.
Yeah. I'm gonna touch 7, 8, but, you know, below an 8. Like, one of the things I've heard is, like, when you're scoring, like, you know, between 7 and 8, generally good, you recommend it. But anything below an 8, you don't, like, make a trip for. You know what I mean? Like, if it's pizza, you're not driving 30 minutes for a pizza that's a 7 or a 7.5. But if it's, like, an 8 and above, it's like, okay, we can take a 30-minute, like, hit the highway real quick to check out this joint. And Akira just isn't quite there for me. Does that make sense? But it's close.
100%.
It's a good movie. It just didn't blow my mind or blow my hair back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and even on the rewatch too, it's interesting to see, like, again, there's, you know, some time between then and now, but it's I definitely won't wait to, you know, close to 10 years to rewatch it, but
yeah. Well, when we do rewatch it, it'll probably, you know, we'll probably talk about it on the post show, or, you know, maybe something, who knows. So keep an eye out for that.
From our Empire, our new facility on top of the Empire State.
Yes, in our penthouse office. That I'm sure we'll probably be there next year. So stay
we might
tuned.
even own the rights to Akira by then.
Who was trying to develop?
Taika Waititi.
And it got shelved, right? Because
I have no idea.
They've tried to do that a million times, and I don't know why. Even people that just it would be a lot, man. I don't know. Or, you know, they completely change it, and it's like you name it Akira, and it's not. I don't know. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of live action adaptations, but we've bitched a lot about that already on the post show, which is coming up next. Thank you guys so much for listening. I think we could probably cap it off here. Is that fair, Grantus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In 2 weeks from you hearing this, or from its publishing date, which is like going to be like November 10th, we'll be talking about Grave of the Fireflies, and then, if all goes well, Demon Slayer, week to week. Season 2. The new Entertainment District arc will be starting roughly around December 5th, so roughly around there. We will start covering that week to week. Stay tuned for that. And then on Fridays, we'll still have the post show. So keep an eye out for the post show. If you haven't listened to that already, we basically just talk about everything else that we're watching, from, I don't know, Squid Games to Jujutsu Kaisen movies and series stuff and 86 and all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you haven't already. Like, follow, comment, subscribe. Support the podcast on every social media platform that you feel comfortable doing that on. Or on Meta, if you've heard of that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.